Madam Deputy Speaker, we are in Remembrance Week, when we remember the dead of past wars. Right now in Sudan, a war as murderous and horrible as anything the world has faced is shattering the lives of civilians, of children, of women, of men, in ways we can scarce countenance. I secured this debate tonight because what is going on in Sudan cannot continue. The fall of the city of El Fasher after a brutal 18-month siege is the latest disaster in what the Foreign Secretary, in her remarks over the weekend, has accurately called the largest humanitarian crisis of the 21st century. Reports have been coming in over the last week of executions, forced expulsions and organised massacres, the evidence of which are literally visible from space, with the images of carnage and bodies strewn in the streets. Conditions in El Fasher have been described as apocalyptic. However, this was not unexpected. It was tragically very much predicted, with warnings coming from numerous sources. Descriptions of El Fasher as another Srebrenica are not misplaced, although in many ways worse.
Honourable Gentleman, give way.
I'll give way.
Yeah.
Shannon.
First of all, Madam Deputy Speaker, can I commend the Honourable Gentleman for Melksham and Devices for bringing this forward. I also commend him for all the work that he did before he came here in his role in all the countries across Africa, and I respect him greatly for his human desire for betterment. As Chair of the APPG for Freedom of Religious Belief, I've spoken in this last year some 14 times, asked questions, and others have as well in Sudan. And I've been acutely aware of the precarious situation for Christians in that region, the murder of Christians and the bestiality and wickedness that takes place. Those patients and staff are murdered in hospital. I have consistently asked government to step up our support for those who are being targeted because of their faith. It grieves me greatly, grieves him greatly, grieves us all greatly. Does the member not agree that we must use any and all methods at our disposal to help those desperately needy, innocent people as a matter of urgency?
Thank you. I thank the honourable member for his kind comments, and I agree with him. And hopefully, in this speech, I'll put forward some ideas that may prove useful. There are no UN peacekeepers on hand to even witness the killings. Current events are a continuation of a calculated political strategy to destroy and ethnically cleanse a province that gives its name to one of the tribes, namely the Fur. The Zagawa, Berti and Mesalit tribes have similarly been targeted in a strategy that began arguably well over 20 years ago. Despite commendable efforts to improve international accountability with support to the ICC and UN in their fact-finding missions, as well as the efforts of many members here and our UK aid programme to raise awareness and support the Sudanese people, clearly what has been done so far is not enough. Please.
Thank the honourable member for giving way. Over 13 million people now need humanitarian aid in Sudan, and millions more have been displaced, with countless others living in fear, hunger and deprivation. Does the honourable member agree that for far too long this is a crisis that has been overlooked, yes, and that for the sake of humanity we now need to turn our attention to Sudan and do what we can to provide aid and support to those who so desperately need it?
I thank the honourable member for his comments, and I heartily agree with him. Humanitarian workers are also under threat, and I would like to commend the work being done as we speak by groups like Doctors Without Borders, MSF, and the International Red Cross. MSF have been treating hundreds fleeing El Fasher over the last week, including men, women and children, suffering from severe malnutrition, gunshot wounds and other injuries linked to beatings and torture. As a former aid worker myself who's lived and worked in Sudan, although many years ago, I want to express my deep sadness over the killing of 5 Sudanese Red Crescent Society volunteers in Bara, North Kordofan. Humanitarian workers are often the first and sometimes only responders for people in desperate situations around the world, and they selflessly give their time and skills as well as their courage and compassion, and my heart goes out to their families. Please.
I thank my honourable friend for bringing this debate and giving way. And would he agree with me that part of the great tragedy of Sudan has been the way it is unfairly overshadowed by conflicts happening elsewhere in the world, and we should be less squeamish about pointing that out to the public here in the United Kingdom and the rest of the world.
Matthew.
I thank the my honourable friend for his comments, and I totally agree. We do need to be far more outspoken on this issue. Please.
I'm grateful to the honourable member bringing forward this debate. When I read the transcript from the International Development Select Committee, I was really struck by the contribution by Liz Ditchburn, who said there is insufficiency in having a structured approach from government around this, and that there needed to be focus and strategy. Does he not agree that we now need to convene in this place such focus and strategy in order to have a comprehensive response?
I very much agree with the honourable lady, and I hope that my speech will bring some ideas to the floor. The government needs to be bolder, more direct and proactive in its work to support Sudan and the Sudanese people. As UN Security Council penholder on Sudan and lead on the core group on Sudan at the United Nations Human Rights Council for the Protection of Civilians, it's our duty to try every possible avenue to push for peace and change. We are all, I'm sure, glad to see the recent announcement by the Foreign Secretary that 5 million will be going in aid to Sudan, in addition to the 120 million already allocated this financial year, with 2 million specifically going to support survivors of sexual violence. This conflict has been particularly devastating for women and girls subjected to that violence, where they often have no potential recourse or justice, or even access to the most basic health services after being attacked. We need to look to the future and to look to recommendations from the sources that predicted the violence currently ongoing. Prevention Approaches, an organisation who repeatedly predicted their potential for extreme violence in El Fasher, has pointed towards the city of Tawila as a next step in the trajectory of the RSF strategy. I will.
Can I congratulate the honourable gentleman on securing this debate? Can I also pay tribute to my good friends from Oxford East and Rotherham for doing so much on this issue? In January 2025, the Biden administration, the US government, said that it judged that the RSF and associated militias had committed genocide in Sudan. I've had a number of constituents from Stockport and across Greater Manchester contact me from the Sudanese community about the horrors taking place in Sudan. I wonder if the honourable gentleman would agree with me that our own government, the UK government, should make a similar assessment of its own.
Matthew.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his comments, and indeed I agree with you. So will the government do for Tawila what was not done for El Geneina, Zamzam or El Fasher, and recognise its precariousness before it's too late? I ask the Minister if the government will use every diplomatic pressure and avenue available to secure guarantees that humanitarian assistance and aid can be delivered unimpeded. Please.
I'm very grateful indeed to the honourable member for securing this debate. It's incredibly important, and indeed grateful to everyone who's participated. He mentioned the issue of impediments to aid. He'll be aware that the IPC assessment, the most recent one, very disturbing assessment, showing that there was famine taking place in El Fasher and in Kadugli, that came out after the Quad statement of the US, Saudi Arabia, Egypt and the UAE, does he agree on the subject of diplomatic pressure that it's really important the UK uses its influence with those members of the Quad to say to them they must pressure the belligerents to stop blocking that much-needed aid in this situation of famine? Thank you.
I completely agree with the Honourable Member, and thank you for raising that point. A third of children under 5 in El Fasher are suffering from acute malnutrition, and some are resorting to eating animal feed and plant waste to survive. I would also hope that they will do everything possible to allow humanitarian corridors open for civilians to leave the besieged areas, and to be assured that they are not going from the frying pan into the fire. The supply of weaponry and military equipment is the oxygen keeping this conflict alive. We, as penholder, should leave efforts to impose a binding, enforceable arms embargo across all of Sudan.
Will the Honourable Member give way?
I will. Thank you.
I'm grateful to him, and he urges an arms embargo, and he urges that the UK uses its role as the penholder at the UN Security Council. But Martin Griffiths has said that really that a peace is likely to come out of the region through powers like UAE, Saudi Arabia. Does he think that the UK should be really using its bilateral relations with these countries to bring peace?
I thank the Honourable Member for his points, and I know he has expertise in terms of the military, so I thank you for that. And if I may continue, crucially we must also suspend arms sales to the United Arab Emirates. The fact that British-made weapons, tools and equipment could be flowing into the hands of those perpetuating these actions is terrible beyond words. I echo the words of my honourable friend, the member for Esher and Walton, that equipment made on our soil must never end up in the hands of those committing such atrocities. With pleasure.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and he raises an important point in his very, very powerful speech. I want to take that point further. Even if British-made weaponry is not being diverted and ending up on the battlefield in Sudan, the UK is still breaching its own arms export licensing criteria under sections 1, 2, 4, 6 and 7, and these rules do not only prohibit exporting weapons proven to be misused, but also restrict sales to any country that may use arms to violate international humanitarian law. So therefore, does my honourable friend agree that the government in exporting arms to the UAE has been acting contrary to international humanitarian law, and we must stop selling arms to the UAE? Brian Mathew.
I agree with my honourable friend, and we really must make sure that this business with arms is stopped. The atrocities that we are witnessing through the news with the work of Barbara Plett-Usher at the BBC and others at The Guardian and Al Jazeera, and through social media trickling through the media blackout, will be remembered for generations. El Fasher, like Srebrenica before it, will sadly likely stand as a symbol of what happens when the world turns a blind eye. I will.
I thank the honourable gentleman for giving way and congratulate him on securing this very important debate. And he has mentioned Srebrenica and the Bosnian conflict twice now. Does he agree with me that in years gone by, conflicts that are causing immense humanitarian suffering, death and carnage resulted in international UN-mandated military forces protecting civilians and humanitarian corridors? And is it not a reflection on the sorry state of international affairs that this doesn't even seem to be on the table as an option, despite this being the greatest humanitarian crisis that the world faces right now?
I agree with the honourable gentleman, and I agree that the world needs to wake up. As penholder, we have the means and the moral responsibility to act and ensure that we and the rest of the world do not turn our backs on Sudan once more. I will be, sir.
I'm very grateful to the honourable gentleman, and I congratulate him for bringing this important debate this evening. I've been to Srebrenica, and in 2002 I was in Sudan, and as I travelled with my research team to the northern Nubian desert, our path was blocked by the presence of the Wagner group, who were training RSF militia and extracting vast quantities of gold. This is an internationalised civil war. Does the honourable gentleman agree with me that an internationalised civil war requires an internationalised solution, and Britain is moral bound to play a leading role in assembling a coalition of the willing?
I thank the honourable member for his comments, and I agree with you, with him. I call on the government to follow on from the London Sudan conference held in April this year, to hold a Lancaster House-style peace conference for all the parties to the conflict, to hold it in a place of safety on neutral ground, where peace in the Sudan and the means to achieve it can be fully debated and a way forward found for peace, reconciliation and rebuilding. Some may say such a journey is impossible, but if we do not try, we will not succeed. If a journey begins with a single step, then let this be such a step. We cannot, we must not allow the killing, torture and rape to continue. Thank you.
Give way. I thank my honourable friend for giving way and for bringing this really important topic. There is one additional thing that I would suggest he might feel he needs to add, which is a sense of urgency to get this solution in place. Would he agree?
I totally agree, and I thank the honourable member for that point. And with that, thank you, Madam Chief.
Minister. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I am very grateful to the honourable member for Melksham and Devices for tabling this debate at such a critical moment for Sudan, which I know will be a matter of concern not only to this House, to his constituents, but to all of our constituents across the country. And I also want to thank him for the contributions this morning in the ODA debate, and that I know from members who are here today who also spoke in the debate this morning, and to also acknowledge his work on the International Development Select Committee and his previous work in aid prior to coming to this House. And I also want to thank other honourable members who have made contributions in the debate today. I know the honourable member will have also followed the debate last week in the House, to which my honourable friend, the member for Bridgend and Porthcawl, also spoke, and on behalf of whom I am also responding today. And to recognise the seriousness of the situation that we are witnessing. The conflict has left more than 30 million people in need of urgent help in what is the world's worst humanitarian crisis. And supporting Sudan remains a vital and top priority for this government. We've heard a number of contributions as well in relation to freedom of religion and belief, and perhaps I can just briefly say on that before I continue my remarks that I will give very briefly.
I thank the Minister for giving way. The United Kingdom has always stood as a defender of human rights, and I say this with deep conviction. How many burned churches and murdered worshippers will it take in Nigeria and Sudan before we call it what it is, a campaign to exterminate Christians? British aid must never bankroll corruption or indifference. Will she urgently press the Sudan and Nigerian government to protect all citizens, but particularly Christians, and ensure that our aid goes to their needs?
Minister. I thank the honourable friend. I thank the honourable member for her contribution, and perhaps I can just reassure her on this: that the UK remains extremely concerned about the persecution of individuals on the basis of their religion or belief. And this was a point also made by the Honourable Member for Strangford as well during the debate. And we have strongly condemned as well in relation to this the violence in Al Fasher and North Darfur, as well as attacks on places of worship, and indeed in other countries across the world. And we regularly use our role as leader of the core group on Sudan at the Human Rights Council as well to advocate for the protection of civilians in line with international law, including the right to freedom of religion and belief. If I could just continue on this and in relation to some of the other points that were made. Recently we have seen advances, as have been referred to, by the Rapid Support Forces, or the RSF, into El Fasher, accompanied by the shocking reports of mass murder and rape. Last week, as has been referenced, the Foreign Secretary condemned the horrific massacre at the Saudi maternity hospital, and indeed also the murder of the very courageous 5 humanitarian workers, and called on the RSF to urgently facilitate rapid, safe and unimpeded humanitarian access across El Fasher. And I think this point has been extremely powerfully made by my right honourable friend, the member for Oxford East, who has raised this and the issues of supporting action in Sudan several times in recent weeks, and I thank her for her contributions. As the United Nations Security Council penholder, we called an urgent Council meeting on the 30th of October to respond to the worsening crisis and penned a press statement condemning the assault by the RSF. And last week we mobilised £23 million in emergency aid for El Fasher, and indeed on the 1st of November the Foreign Secretary announced a further £5 million to help get food, clean water and medical supplies to over 100,000 people in North Darfur. Our Special Representative to Sudan, Richard Crowder, remains in contact with the RSF and their political alliance, TASIS, pressing for restraint and reminding them of their obligations under international law. And we are also talking to international partners and calling on those who have influence over the parties to use it to urge restraint and to bring them to the table. The Honourable Member made a very important point when he said that this cannot go on, and we need to find a way for a ceasefire and to make sure that we have a political solution. So our approach to Sudan is based on 3 pillars. The first is that push for a permanent ceasefire and supporting a civilian-led transition. The second is securing unimpeded humanitarian access in order to deliver life-saving aid. The third is to protect civilians and to ensure accountability. Madam Deputy Speaker, in April the UK convened the London Sudan Conference, also referred to, alongside co-hosts France, Germany, the EU and the African Union, bringing together a broad coalition of international partners to build consensus around protecting civilians, improving humanitarian access and ending the conflict. We have sustained the momentum built by the conference, and at the UN General Assembly in September, the Foreign Secretary hosted high-level events alongside our conference co-hosts, refocusing global attention on the crisis and the urgent need for action. That call for continuing to have that global attention was one, I believe, echoed by a number of members in their interventions today. The UK Special Representative for Sudan has maintained regular engagement with the Sudanese civil society, including the anti-war coalition Sumud. And through the Sudan Stability and Growth Programme, which aims to support Sudan on the path of inclusive, resilient, peaceful political settlement. UK support, I will give way in a moment, UK support has helped establish Sudan's largest pro-democracy coalition, including work with 200 women to shape a national political dialogue.
I'm grateful to the Minister giving way in what she has said, but could she say how the UK is approaching the UAE, in particularly the supply of arms and also the use of mercenaries which are being deployed into Sudan?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention, and I think first I perhaps should make also clear, as was my colleague, the honourable member, my honourable friend, the member for Penarth, also recently has said, that we take very seriously allegations that UK-made military equipment may have been transferred to Sudan in breach of the UK arms embargo. The UK indeed has one of the most robust and transparent export control regimes in the world. There is no evidence in the recent reporting of UK weapons or ammunition being used in Sudan, and there are no current export licences for the equipment reported on. And she may well want to continue to raise her concerns with my honourable friend. But if I could say as well that the UK continues to emphasise that external support to warring parties only fuels the conflict. And we urge all actors to press for that vital political solution. That is why we welcome the Quad's efforts to seek to secure an immediate 3-month ceasefire and to end this terrible suffering. And conversations continue with members of the Quad and also others across the international community. I'm conscious of time. I will just continue, and I may be able to in due course. Turning to humanitarian aid, the UK remains one of the largest donors to Sudan. The Prime Minister has made clear that funding to Sudan will be protected for the next 3 years. At the London Sudan conference in April, we also announced £120 million in new funding to reach over 650,000 people with food, cash, water, sanitation and nutritional support this year. If I could just continue to continue with my remarks briefly. In May, Baroness Chapman announced a further £36 million for Sudanese refugees in Chad to help ease the regional burden of displacement. And UK aid has already reached 2.5 million people since the conflict began. Last year alone, we treated over 98,000 children for malnutrition, gave 744,000 people access to clean water, and supported 71,000 victims of international humanitarian law violations with cash assistance. I will very briefly give one.
I thank the Minister very much indeed. I'll take her back to the question of the conference she was talking about. Is she absolutely certain that all of the actors in this place are part of that conference? Because there's been reference to certainly the United Arab Emirates, and maybe there are other actors in that region who didn't seem to be on the list of people she mentioned might have been here in April.
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for her question, and indeed we continue to work with the members of the Quad and also others across the international community, and in terms of our role as the pen holder as well, we continue to engage all across the international community, because what we need to see is that ceasefire and a political solution. If I could also could continue on this. I'll try and come back to my honourable friend, my right honourable friend. In relation to support from the UK, I will.
Order. The House stands adjourned.